Clyde Bellecourt was a member of the Ojibwe tribe from Minneapolis, Minnesota. He was one of the founders of AIM. He did a large amount of time in Stillwater State Prison, Minnesota. While in prison, he went on a hunger strike and met an Ojibwe medicine man named Eddie Benton, who tried to get him to begin eating again. Eddie tried different things, such as throwing candy at Clyde. Eddie began quoting literature to Clyde, which piqued his interest. Clyde began reading about his tribal history and heritage. He learned that he should be proud of who he was, and this is what motivated him to begin eating again. Vernon Bellecourt was another co-founder of AIM. Vernon is the author of The Birth of AIM in Native American Testimony. Vernon Bellecourt was Clyde's brother, who was also a member of the Ojibwe tribe from Minneapolis, Minnesota. Vernon only went to school until 9th grade, when he could no longer handle the racism he encountered. Vernon grew up on the reservation, but moved to the city at the age of 15, where he began to learn about the mainstream way of life. At 20 years old, he was a self-proclaimed Robin Hood. He was caught and sentenced to 40 years, went through a youth program that wiped his record clean, and let him out for good behavior. Then he was caught and sentenced to another 45-year sentence, of which he only served 3.5 years. This is when he decided to turn his life around, mainly because he did not want to go back to prison. While in prison, he learned to be a barber, and when he was let out, he ended up owning a beauty parlor. Ojibwe and Chippewa are the same word pronounced differently depending on accent. Ojibwe is used more in Canada and Chippewa is used in the United States, because that is the name that is used in all of the treaties. Their name means original men, and their language is Algonquin. The Chippewa tribe is one of the biggest and most powerful in the Great Lakes area: Minnesota, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Canada. Unfortunately, the size of their tribe is not recognized because the population is divided by the Canadian and US border. They were hunters and trappers and became heavily involved with the French fur trade. Their language even became the unofficial language of the fur trade. The smaller tribes within the Chippewa have their own established communities and school systems and laws for enforcement. Unfortunately, there are high rates of unemployment on the reservations. Much of the traditional Chippewa religion was an inward and personal experience. They believe in a creator, evil spirits, and objects having spiritual power. They also believe that they are a small part of nature, no greater or less significant than any other living creature. The Chippewa wore buckskin with added fur and puffed moccasins. They passed time by telling stories, an art form they are still known for. They harvested wild rice and maple syrup. They also fished for sturgeon. And these are all staples of the Chippewa diet. Many of the Chippewa are still hunters and fishers, and have small businesses, including campgrounds, bait shops, hotels, restaurants, lumber stores, and service stations. The Ojibwe are said to have lived near the mouth of the St. Lawrence River 500 years ago, and then migrated in 3 separate groups: north, south, and east. These 3 groups are known as the 3 Fires. The Chippewa were missionized by Jesuits, and many today are Roman Catholic. When Clyde was in prison with Eddie Benton, the Ojibwe medicine man who helped him end his hunger strike, they began an Indian awareness program. Once they got out, they fought to keep other young Native men out of prison as well. One of the first meetings happened in 1968 in Minneapolis, where Clyde was elected the national director. The name American Indian Movement was given to them by a group of respected older women. There were other Native organizations, but all of those were run by white do-gooders. AIM was the first Native organization with an all-Native board and staff. AIM instilled a new awareness, pride, dignity, power, and strength in the young people who joined the movement. They worked hard to fix police-community relations. They formed a patrol called the AIM Patrol to record police interacting with the community, to hold them accountable, and have evidence to press charges against police who used unnecessary force. AIM asked a young medicine man named Leonard Crow Dog to define what an Indian was. He said that it was a spiritual warrior who fights for their people. He said, "The warrior class of the century is bound by the bond of the drum. That circle around the drum brings us together. We can have 200 or 300 people around that drum from all different tribes, all singing the same song." AIM even created a bumper sticker that says, "Aim for sovereignty." And most of the natives didn't know what that meant, because of AIM, they do, and they have something to fight for. In 2007, Vernon died due to a pneumonia complication. Throughout his life, he fought against racism and for the betterment of the Native American people. He participated in part of the 71-day standoff at Wounded Knee in South Dakota in 1973. Up until his death, Vernon led the AIM abroad work and met with foreign leaders, including leaders from Nicaragua, Palestine, Libya, and Venezuela. His final trip was to Venezuela, falling ill upon his return home. Clyde currently still resides in Minneapolis with his wife Peggy. They have 4 grown children. Clyde is 82 years old and fighting against stage 4 prostate cancer. As a co-founder of AIM, he spent his adult life working to expose the genocidal treatment of Native Americans. According to Bellecourt, "We made it clear we were the landlords and caretakers of the country, and it was the end of the month, and rent was due, in health, education, and welfare. They didn't get this land for nothing." Clyde continues to inspire Native American people to overcome the racial challenges that face them and to celebrate their culture.